Harvey, my name is Bill Nowak. I'm the Executive Director of NY-GEO. Jim?
Jim Thomas, Thomas Geothermal Engineering. I'm actually located in South Jersey.
Joanne?
You're muted.
Oh, hi, I'm Joanne Coons, and I'm a geothermal enthusiast, cheerleader, I guess. Not really my profession, but I'm an advocate.
Great. Harvey, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So my name's Harvey Colin. One of the companies I own is waterheaters.com with my son, Scott. He couldn't be here today. I know Billy through several years, and we are water heater experts and all types of fuels and water heaters. So Billy asked if I would join the meeting, and I'm here to either help or listen and whatever we can do. So that's who we are. We're located on Long Island, by the way, and we service the Montauk to Manhattan area. And I do ship water heaters across the country if people need them.
Nice. I'll be in Montauk at the end of the month celebrating my son's birthday. Coming from Buffalo.
Terrific.
Marvin, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Marvin Church. I'm out of Southern Westchester County, and I am a geo enthusiast.
JR?
Hi, Harvey. I'm Director of Operations for NY-GEO, trying to learn from Bill, Jim, Billy, Joanne, Jay, and everybody else. I've been on board for a little over 2 years, or no, year and a half, and I'm in Poughkeepsie.
Jay?
Jay Egg. I'm a geothermal consultant and have been following this wonderful organization just about since they started. I'm out of Arizona right now. Thank you.
And Bob?
Bob Wyman. I'm from New York City, Upper West Side.
Thanks. So that's everybody, I think. I had sent out an agenda which include
Garen's coming in.
Geothermal gatherings, the water heater issue that we've been working on. There's setback regulations that Bob had wanted to talk about, which is good. And then membership ideas and a project I had been interested in proposing. Is there anything anyone else would like to add for an agenda item? Hearing none, why don't we go into the hot water item? Harvey, that you're welcome to stay around after this, or if you're busy, you can. Billy had asked for it to go first, so that could fit your interest. So just as background, for a while, we have been talking about the need to have manufacturers come up with water heaters that are more easily compatible with geothermal ground loops. We had sent out a letter a month or two ago to several manufacturers, largely worked on by Jim, who's on this call, and Jens Ponekow, who's on the board of NY-GEO, and have gotten a pretty good response from some of the manufacturers, at least in terms of being able to listen to what our concerns and interests are. And this afternoon, we had a meeting with Ream. And Jim, do you want to summarize some of that meeting?
Well, let's just back up a little bit. Yeah, I started with a list, I guess last August, of things I thought might be beneficial for us to kind of kickstart, boost our industry a little bit. And a ground coupled domestic hot water was one of the ones on the list. And I've gone back and forth quite a bit with John Shabaka on all the other items. And we kind of decided that the domestic hot water would be one that should bubble to the top and take a look at. So, as a group, we talked about it on a number of Friday Zooms. We started putting a requirements document together, saying what kind of features do we want, how do we want this thing to look, etc. And that took quite a bit of time. And the interesting thing, once we got to a final document, it looked an awful lot like what is currently out there known as the air source hybrid electric tanks. And that is pretty much dominated by maybe 3 major manufacturers, Ream, A.O. Smith, and Bradford White. There are some other smaller companies. There's a German company, Stiebel Eltron, has a couple offerings. And as it turns out, if you look at what's currently available on the market, there are 0 ground coupled units. There are none. There's about 240 that have been certified Energy Star that are on the list. So there are quite a few models. And if you look at that list, maybe 200 of them come from Ream. So Ream is a big player in this space. And I don't know, Harvey, if you saw that Ream product or not. It actually gets sold today in Home Depot. So you can go into a big box store and buy that. It's called Proterra is the product. But once Bill sent out the letter to a number of manufacturers, the first bite we got was from Bradford White. And several of us had a Zoom call with them, I guess, a month, 6 weeks ago. And then there was some follow-up, some emails. But I would say what came out of that conversation, they said that this would be an easy product to manufacture, to design. It's basically taken out an air source coil and putting a coaxial coil in to make it ground coupled. So the engineering part was not going to be hard. What they were worried about was the market size. What's the number? How many of these can we sell? And they were a little bit cagey about the number that they sell. Apparently, they've all pulled out of some reporting system where they were actually producing numbers of sales. And what we've basically been told is that the entire air source hybrid hot water tank market is about 84,000 units nationally, with maybe 12% growth, something like that. So we realize that market's probably going to go up as gas starts to get banned, etc. Sent them some more materials. We haven't heard back from them. I think, again, they're mulling what the sales potential can be. John Manning also gave me a contact over at Stiebel Eltron, which is a German company. The president of the U.S. branch of it, Frank Stiebel, called me and we spoke about a week ago, and pretty much their concern is the same. What kind of sales can we have? And part of what they sell is not only hot water heaters, but they also sell a air source hot water system, kind of like the Enertech, where it's air source to water for space heating. So they seem as a company to be bought in quite a bit to air source. And then we had the Zoom or the team meeting about an hour ago with Ream, and I think a lot of the conversation there got into a lot of the high level as to why we need this. I think Jens gave a pretty good presentation on what the impact to the grid is going to be if we continue down the air source pathway, et cetera. And with hot water, it's kind of unique to a certain, respect, because hot water gets primarily used in the morning between the hours of 6 and 8 when people are getting up, getting ready to go out to work, to school, etc. And then there's another peak in the evening when they come home from work or school. They're cooking, they're washing clothes, they're washing dishes, maybe taking showers again. So it's a very peaky use. And if you look at the use during the rest of the day, it's pretty much just to keep the water hot because of standby losses. Tank just sits there and loses heat to the space. So typical tank, if you look at it, runs 4 or 5 times a day, but with the 2 big peaks. But our problem is basically the morning peak happens in the winter at the same time when we have the winter peak on the space conditioning. It's the coldest hours in pre-dawn. People are getting up. They're probably had a setback on the thermostat. They jack up the temperature 3-4 degrees. They're trying to heat their space so they're comfortable to try to get out the door. So at that point in time, we're dealing with no solar. There's no sun out at that time of day. So our grid is going to be hurt if we continue to go air source. And I think Ream got that picture. I don't think they were looking at that before. So I think we made some progress there. And they promised to take it back to their management. I think, again, they were asking about numbers of sales. So So I think they're probably looking for many thousands of units. I don't know if we could promise them that many today. So it's kind of a chicken and egg, right? We would put them in if we had them, and the more choices we have, would be better for us. It would be better for us to sell hot water solutions. Jens went through the whole thing, how they used to do it with the water-to-water heat pump, water furnace, separate tank. Knowing that hardware was were around $10,000, which made it a very expensive water heater. So, and I think we're talking the Proterra, $1,500 plus or minus. So that's kind of where we're at. We have some interest. We haven't had anybody say, yeah, we're going to go do it. So the other company that we had a bite on was A.O. Smith. We still haven't got anything set up with A.O. Smith. They're another major player in the market. So Harvey, what do you think about the whole thing about ground coupled DHW?
Well, I think certainly from the little bit I know about it, it would be great. But from a manufacturer's point of view, and I'm not a manufacturer, but my background goes back to the solar days back in 1976, 78, and then into the 80s when I had a solar company and we designed it about domestic hot water. So everything you're talking about domestic hot water is correct. There are peaks and so forth. Today, one of the other brands that I didn't hear you mention, and you might have spoken to them, is a company called Rinnai, R-I-N-N-A-I, and they're like the world's largest tankless water heaters, and they supply about or have about 30 to 40% of the U.S. market. Not so much in the New York area, but nationwide. And we're a big distributor and seller of those, and they do make a air unit as well. And I think the reason, again, I'm speaking for manufacturers, I don't know them, but a manufacturer needs volume. And even 84,000 units is a drop comparison to just on Long Island. They replaced probably 200,000 water heaters a year are replaced just on Long Island. That would be standard tank type water heater. So A.O. Smith being the largest manufacturer of water heaters in our country, and they make lots of brands. They make American, they make a whole bunch of other brands under the A.O. Smith, manufacturing. So I would think that the idea, and I'd like to know more about how many homes or how many buildings have geothermal for the processing, and can you discuss that number with the manufacturers and say, hey, listen, we've got X number of people who are currently, because I think the challenge that I see as a business owner is, we have customers that will pay us very nicely to install their water heater, whether it be a tankless or regular type. And I have other customers that we lose to the box stores because they won't pay $1 more than what Home Depot or Lowe's will give them the water heater for. So you have a price point that you're reaching. And so how many people are ready to go into the geothermal and create that system? And that's my question to you, really. So I'll just stop for a minute and let you answer that.
Well, one of the issues that we were confronted with, and this came from another whole set of circumstances, how many systems were rebated by NYSERDA between the years 2017 and 2019. Mm-hmm. And we heard some numbers thrown around like 25,000 air source. I don't know what the number was on ground source, but as it turns out, they rebated about 1,400 projects. Wasn't a huge number. Wasn't a huge number. Now the program has been sent over to the power company, so we don't have visibility on what's happened in the past year or so. But it's not a huge number. And so, we do realize that the entire market in the US for conventional gas and electric is somewhere around 9 million. So it is a big number. So we are certainly small. We're only 1% of the, the space conditioning market. We're trying to change that. So it is a chicken and egg, right? Unless we have the inexpensive stuff, we can't be putting in a $10,000 hot water solution on a system that's going to be $10,000 to $15,000 more expensive because you have to put a loop in. So it just adds on top of it. And there's no reason why if you put in a nice space conditioning system, you shouldn't get a nice hot water system. And with that, they're going to sell probably twice as many water heaters because they only tend to last about half as long as a geothermal unit. So there's a replacement market there as well. So once we get into everybody in 2050 having a heat pump, and maybe some big fraction that'll be geothermal ground source, this won't be a problem. But trying to get there today is kind of difficult. And the point that Jens was trying to make over and over was that when you put a air source heat pump in a conditioned space, it's taking heat out of that space that you just had to put in there with another heat pump. And if it's an air source that's struggling when it's cold out, you've made it even that much smaller, and it's just going to kick on the electric elements. So you're going to get electric elements either in the water heater or in the space conditioning equipment. And so his argument is it's going to kill the grid. And he had some stuff from NY-ISO, some of the projections, et cetera. And, I think for some of us looking at the long-term picture, we realize that there isn't enough generating capability into the future to handle all that if we don't get on a different pathway. I think the problem is now is everybody sees the peak still in the summer, and we're still 5 or 10 years out from that peak moving to the winter, and it's going to be a problem keeping up with it. Long term, something's going to have to change. So getting people to see that and understand it is not as easy as you might think.
No.
I was impressed to hear the REAM folks say, it's their job to be looking 10 years down the line. And
Yeah.
I think Jens did a really good job of explaining to them the policy changes that are happening in New York in particular. One thing that I wanted to let folks know in relation to this is that the GEO Exchange organization, the national organization, is working to come up with funding for a national study on the potential for job creation in the geothermal heat pump industry. And they will be using that in some of the discussions they're having relative to extending the tax credit and so forth. So that study might be a really good tool to use with these manufacturers. And my sense is they're going to want to get it done pretty quickly. They've been speaking with a consultant about getting it happening. So that could be something that we can really use in these discussions moving forward.
Yeah, if you don't mind me jumping in for a moment. So as I said, Renai, they have manufacturing in Georgia, and the engineers I've dealt with there are truly tuned into a lot of ideas. And I certainly think if you wanted to reach out, or I can make a contact for you to the engineers at Renai, they make the tankless. And of course, you don't want to hear about gas, but they do make tankless, which uses about a third less energy because of water's not being heated until it's being used. So, that they could, I believe they would be the ones to speak to about adding the loop in. They're very flexible. Question again comes down to, is it 24,000 units a year? Is it 10,000? How many units realistically would they need to manufacture too? But I think being in Georgia, they are very flexible, and we've done incredible projects with them, rooftop stuff. I mean, just very, very interesting things. And I think they would be open to it. I mean, I haven't spoken about the geothermal, but I think there's a possibility. And just let me know who you want to speak to. I mean, who I should speak to in this group, and bring in an engineer and let them talk to you guys.
Well, Jens and I have been trying to handle this outside the group. So just send me email, give me a contact.
Okay, sure.
Jim,
I'll
you
get,
putting that
I'll
in
get
the
your
chat?
information from Billy afterwards.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
Great. Any other comments, ideas relative to the hot water heating item?
Hi, this is Bob. Do you mind if I make a quick comment?
Go for it.
And let me just I think you mentioned the REAM guys saying that their job was to look 10 years in the future. And I just want to say that as somebody who spent most of my life as a product manager, it was in the computer space, not in the water, but anyway, that's you got to understand that's absolutely the way a manufacturer has to think. It's current market share, current market numbers are interesting, but the real question is, what's the market going to look like when my product ships? And it's not going to ship today or tomorrow. It's going to ship like next year or 5 years from now or something like that. I think we really need to stress the fact that we're in the process of changing the way policymakers look at these problems. We're changing the way people understand the issues with grid and with peak demand and the rest. And somebody who looks ahead, produces the product, or at least understands how to produce it, can then do things like go to utilities and say, guys, you know, there's no market for this now, but this is a product you should want, and you could create incentives to encourage people to use it, and could get benefit from that. I mean, like, you know, that if we, in the rate cases in New York, if we had, you know, high efficiency water heaters that were ground coupled or whatever, we could have put in incentives for those in negotiating the rate cases, or EAMS or whatever. We can't now because the stuff's not available on the market. It's been done to a certain extent with air source heat pumps for water heating, but essentially you can't move policy unless you got the product to focus the policy move on. Whoever is first to market with that product has the advantage of being the one that the utilities are going to, the utilities and policymakers are going to be focusing on it and pushing business towards.
Thank you. Thank you. Why don't we move into our next item at this point, which is the summer geothermal gatherings, or GGs, as I have started thinking of them. Joanne, who is one of our resident visionaries, has been thinking about this and actually came up with something that we passed along. Joanne, do you want to introduce the concept once again and talk about where you think things are at?
I'd like me to share it. Do you have that document that I sent you to share, or I can share it if I have this?
Why don't you go ahead?
Okay, I gotta find it here. Hang on. There it is. All right, so I think you can see it. All right, so my concept is, like, and since we haven't been able to meet in person, and networking is kind of fun, and the Tuesday webinars I think are phenomenal, but they're still missing that personal contact element. I just threw together, like, across the state, a couple ideas, and I don't know about scheduling because I don't know people's workload in the summer. I put them down for Fridays, and that's all tentative and times and everything. But I figured we'd start in Buffalo with Made at the Mist, and it would be starting on July 9th, and then every 2 weeks meeting at different spots. So Made at the Mist, they take off I don't have that down here. I just got the email back from them. They have a tour every 15 minutes, so 4 times an hour. So we can just schedule it and get tickets and meet there and have, you know, that experience. Then 2 weeks later, I love Bob's idea about Howe Caverns. It's just so right on about what we do underground. And I don't know if anybody else has been there, but I'm pretty familiar with it because it's kind of my locale. So I thought that'd be fun. And in addition to that, I looked up that the local golf course has a pretty nice menu, like a tavern menu. We could all meet afterwards and have a luncheon or something. That could be optional. I didn't include that. And then moving along to the Hudson Valley, the River Maritime Museum has an electric solar powered boat, and they have a tour of an old lighthouse, which is kind of interesting. It'd be kind of like nice, and we can talk along the way. And lastly, I wanted to do a bike ride, and that would be back up in Albany because I would do the bike ride, and I'm familiar. This is a good bike ride, this particular route, and starts in downtown Albany and it goes south and back around 10 miles and then back up. But I was hoping to reach out to our current members, our new members, area heating and cooling agencies, all the Heat Smart campaigns. Hi, Hannah. And I'm trying to think of maybe colleges. course, they're out of session and it's pretty hard to get them on board during the summertime. But anybody who's interested, even, you know, people have interest in maybe joining or going to training and finding out some information from firsthand from an installer as to, you know, what would it, you know, what would it take and what's it all about, and just be able to talk to someone. So try to keep them pretty reasonable. I don't know what you think. I don't know how to organize it, I'll be honest with you. I think we'd have to put it out and kind of like have a sign up, and I might need some help for the people around the state as far as attendance, because I'm not sure I can make every single one, but I could try.
So Joanne, you know, great job pulling this information together, and organizing it is the next
Right.
question. You know, I am burned to a crisp.
No, I know you are. I'm not asking you to. I'm just
Yeah.
saying, you know, if we could, I could write it up and we could throw it out there and, you know, have a sign up and see what, you know, who shows up. And, you know, if we don't have a critical mass, if we don't have 5 or more people, I would say, then we just send out a cancellation. But it have to be a registration type system, so we know what's going to happen and what to expect.
So, well, that brings up who is going to do that organizing, getting the word out and tracking things. I've been watching, as I mentioned last time, both Wisconsin and Minnesota have either a golf outing or a motorcycle outing, and I'm seeing more and more kind of emails that sound like they're having trouble getting everybody organized to do it. I think it'll be a substantial amount of work. I know, you know, one idea would just be to put out a general call and see what the interest is. And if there's enough interest there, then actually put some energy into organizing it. But it seems to me we need to assess among ourselves who would be willing to put work in to make this happen. And is that enough kind of people power to do it? And then to kind of try and take the idea out to see if there would be enough response to it.
Well, I don't mind keeping track, making arrangements. I think it, you know, I think I try to keep it simple. You know, meet at the flagpole at 2 o'clock and.
So are these just proposed dates? Just dates?
Yeah, I didn't know exactly what people's schedules are and what would work for them. I figured a backside of a weekend is probably best in the summertime, but I don't like weekends per se because the crowds are typically crazy. They're probably on Friday too, but.
Yeah, they're Friday. So how are we going to do this Zoom if we're on a bicycle?
What do you mean Zoom?
Well, our Friday Zoom, these are Friday dates.
Oh, well,
I'm kidding.
Oh, I never thought about that.
We can suspend some of these.
Oh, we want to miss that.
Do
look.
installers work on weekends, or I'm assuming they're working on Fridays, right? Businesses.
Yeah, that's
You're
kind
not going to
true.
find a day that's going to, you know, work with everybody. So I don't know. Friday's fine with me. You know, I would lean towards a bike thing, but I could do some of the others. Unfortunately, Niagara Falls is very far from me.
No, I understand. That's why I spread it out. You know, make one this summer and just, you know,
Yeah.
meet somebody. The other idea that's not listed here and I started working on is having like tours, like all around the state of geothermal projects, like the Top Job, and that wouldn't be the summer. It'd be more like into the starting in the fall. But if we start getting some people that are, you know, taking some, you know, moving and meeting, and it's just networking is so great.
Would a Survey Monkey type survey sent out to all members in a just-in mailing work? To
It would
try and
work,
say-
but I think you're overthinking it. I think just put it out there, say this is what we're doing. You can email me with your sign up registration and commitment, and I'll put the list together and we'll do it. Done.
Yeah, I suggest you don't do it in a just in that's so jam-packed with information it could easily be overlooked.
Well,
But
that's not
yeah.
the only vehicle.
No, I'm saying
think you have to
that for
cover all
John,
bases.
JR.
Yeah.
JR suggested the just in, not a good idea. But to everyone on the list and say something like, let's have some fun this summer.
Yeah.
And I can have like
I
a
will-
deadline a week before so that I know if it's going to happen or not. We have enough time to cancel or, it's a go.
I'm up for being a co-point person on anything in the Hudson Valley or maybe south of Albany. From the Catskills to the Massachusetts line.
So I'm trying to read the chat. I'm reading it, but I got to blow it up to see who wrote what. Somehow the names aren't appearing.
So Joanne, I said, I think it's great. Thank you so much for pulling this together. Just put the dates out the way you got them and get a place for people to sign up. Put the date,
Yeah.
the time, who's going to sign up and make commitments. See who does it. And then, like you said, a week before, decide if either it's happening or it's not. But if 3 to 5 people do it, 3 to 5 people hanging out, taking a day off on a Friday to go and do something fun sounds awesome. So
I always learn something from everybody. Of course, that's me. So two things we're looking for are the date looks reasonable. And maybe I could do it. See, I try to make it more so that if you wanted to make it a day trip, you didn't have to stay overnight. So I scheduled it more in the daytime. I could do it later in the afternoon type things, but then a lot of people might have to stay overnight, which would they'd incur more expenses, and I don't know. It is what it is.
That.
So, the dates, times, they look reasonable. And then the second thing is, oh yeah, you probably can't see all this because I'm not scrolling. And the second thing is, what was the second thing? Oh, should we do it? Give it a try.
Yeah.
yeah, I think send it around to everybody that's part of New York-GEO for now, but just set up some easy way for people to sign
All right,
up and tell you which.
here's one more list I wanted to include. Every week I send just into every senator and assembly person in New York State. I would send this to them too. Maybe they would show up.
Oh boy.
Would that be a bad thing?
No.
We can share it with our other member organizations, Renewable Heat Now and New Yorkers for Clean Power, or anybody else. And, hey.
We're talking big tent, right?
What about spouses?
Pardon me?
What about spouses?
Sure,
They come
right.
along too?
Definitely. Oh, I didn't even thought about, maybe I should mention that. Good idea. Because it's not clear.
What about kids?
You're pushing it now.
I think we should vote and in this group and pick 2. Maybe just pick 2 right now. I think 4 is just so many.
Oh, I disagree. I think it's all over the state, and you pick whichever one you like. And if you want to do one, you do one. You want to do none, you do none. You want to do 4, do all of them. So, I mean, they're spread out a bit. I think it's a great list. I think it's a wonderful opportunity myself, and I would like to take advantage of at least 2. I would love to do all 4. I might not be able to squeeze it in, but I think it's great. And at least one's by most people. So anyway, that's my thought.
Jim,
Yeah,
I'm going to come back and ask you. You're the closest we have to an installer here, and is a weekday significantly different than a weekend day?
You were asking my opinion?
Yeah.
Every day kind of looks the same, but after being cooped up for the last year and a half, I'm looking forward to getting out and doing something. That's kind of where I'm at. I'm glad that I can go into, like people are not wearing masks anymore. You feel some kind of relief, some, sense of freedom. I think we all should get out and get something, have some enjoyment this summer. That's my feeling. I'm not worrying about the day. It's just, it's another day.
Guys, there's about, I think you're totally overthinking this. I mean, just do whatever feels good, and then you'll learn from the process, and then maybe next year you can do a better job. But like you're dealing with, sort of unknowns. You're not going to be able to think your way through to figuring them out. Just do it, see what happens. You'll learn, and then you can use that knowledge in the future.
Yeah, I like to keep it simple philosophy myself. All right, so
Complexity reduces response in
Yeah.
like all forms. Okay, it's a vital lesson. Anybody learns if they ever do direct mail, the last thing in the world you want to do is give people options or choices on how to respond, because every option you provide reduces response rates, and that applies to virtually everything. So if the simpler it is, the higher your response rate's likely to be.
I used to do something similar to this for New York Solar Energy Society. And to be honest with you, of the people that showed up, I was very surprised. I would never have thought, but they were so interested and they really were bringing to the table some really neat stuff. So yeah, just throw it out there and see what happens. And by word of mouth, people will show up, hopefully get more involved in our organization and help it grow. I really want to get more smart people involved. And installers and, opportunity to talk to an expert while you're having some fun, type thing.
We might also consider people who are involved in the clean energy communities and the climate smart communities, because they really need to know about geothermal heat pumps. And I'd also like to can we throw into the mix Lisa's idea of a wine tour of the Finger Lakes?
Well, the one that she suggested is booked. I've already looked into that one.
What do you mean it's booked?
When I went to their website.
I don't know what website you're talking about.
I don't know. You sent me a link once about, it was a organic wine or something. I can't remember names.
You mean Suzanne Hunt's Vineyard?
I think so, yeah.
Well, I mean, it's not booked for the whole summer. I'm a member. I mean, I could book us a wine tasting.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay,
But
well,
are you saying
information I got off the internet, it didn't look possible.
Oh. Well, I could certainly look into it. I mean, I personally would love to substitute that either for Made of the Mist or How Caverns, but we wouldn't have to just go there. We could do other, as I said, we could do other, we could tour other sites. There's the geothermal airport. There's the, we could end up at the wine tour place. We could do several different stops. So I don't know. I'm happy to organize that if people are interested.
I'm always up for a wine tasting.
So trying to wrap things up here, I heard JR volunteer to help, and I'm thinking that, we should leave it in the hands of the folks who are willing to do some work on this. I hear JR and Joanne. Does anybody want to be part of that committee, quote unquote?
Yeah, I'll participate. It's Ron.
Great. So we'll hear back from the three of you all next week, and maybe there will be even outreach happening in the meantime if you can figure out the best way to do it. Is it okay if we move forward onto the next agenda items? So the next one we had is the CSA 448 setback regs, and I'll give a really quick introduction. Basically, on a national level, there are currently setback provisions that you need to be 10 feet from a property line. And this is going to make things impossible in many urban areas. And when it was raised, folks couldn't really justify it. And they're looking at this point to make some exceptions and to have it work better so there doesn't need to be that kind of a setback. And that's what I know at this point. Bob, did you have more specifics that you wanted to give, and were you looking for anything from the group?
Yeah, no, I just want people to know about this. It's like, I think y'all know I live in New York City, so I worry about urban geothermal. Actually, give a few more of the requirements here. You got to be 10 feet from a property line. You got to be 10 feet from a sewer lateral. You got to be 3 feet from buried utilities, 3 feet from any existing or planned building or above ground structure, 50 feet from a water well, 100 feet from a spring, etc. And the reality is that, you know, in a place like New York, where we've got a lot of, say, brownstones and row houses, which are on 20-foot frontages, and going down as far as like 14 feet for frontage, they're just, you can't, you know, if NYSERDA enforces these standards, which they say they will, that essentially means you cannot do geothermal in New York City, and by implication, you wouldn't be able to do it in other more urban areas. One of the things I think, you know, I'd like to see is for us to start drilling in sidewalks and in the berm in front of houses, but getting 10 feet away from them, as well as, you know, 20 feet from sewer laterals and things like that. It's just that not even that would work. So anyway, so I sent off some mails about this, got a bunch of folks looking at it, and it looks like there are people connected to the standards process who first have substantiated that no, there doesn't seem to have been any great thought that was put into these limitations. They're pretty much arbitrary. The urban problem wasn't really considered, and so efforts are going to be made to address them. But as it stands now, if NYSERDA enforces these requirements, essentially we can't do geothermal in urban environments, and that's a problem.
Bob, just so you know, I have written to Mark Metzner to get a couple of the dates that he would be able to meet with that group, and we are going to try and set up a conversation to advance this. If anybody from this call wants to be part of that conversation, please let me know and I'll include you in the invite.
Do these setbacks apply to a community loop system, a district loop system, where most of the loop is going to be in the right of way?
It applies to vertical ground heat exchangers. There are also requirements for horizontal systems, etc. But I think you may have distribution pipes that could be considered part of the heat exchanger, and thus they would be a problem. But I think frankly the community stuff is a very small part of the potential market here. I think whether or not it does apply to that, I think we've got a problem which is large enough that it has to be addressed with some urgency. Yeah, one of the things that I expect a community system to do, for instance, like if it was for brownstones, what I would like to see in New York is, for instance, a bunch of wells put in the sidewalk and the berm, which would be closer than 10 feet to the buildings and the property lines, and then horizontal pipes used to distribute the systems among those pipes. So, for instance, you'd have series of row houses, maybe all on 18-foot frontages. You'd put wells in every 20 foot, which would be the proper spacing for the wells, and then you'd use horizontal systems to distribute the heat among the buildings. That would be a community system, but it would be prohibited by these setbacks.
Has anyone brought this up to NYSERDA?
I think the
believe
point is NYSERDA has brought it up to us. You know,
Oh.
they're preparing to enforce that based on it being in this section of code.
Well, we got to remember that they're kind of ivory tower people. They're not people who do the work. So I don't think they think about these practicalities.
Well, no. Okay, but you have to recognize they're doing the right thing. There is a standard, it's a binational standard, US and Canada, that has these requirements. Their assumption is that the binational standard is, was rationally arrived at, and so they're just incorporating it into their procedure. That's totally the right thing for them to do. The step that was missing was perhaps looking at the binational standard and determining whether or not it actually made sense. But I don't think we can fault NYSERDA for citing the standard. The standard organization should have produced a good and useful and justified standard. It did not.
So if there's anyone who's interested in being a further part of this discussion, please let me know and I'll put you on the invite list. There's a couple more items. We've got 9 minutes at this point. I am going to need to get off at 4. I'll leave it continuing if folks want to keep talking at that point. One item I wanted to bring up is, we were talking about how many installations there have been, and there's very little data that we have access to about that. We got NYSERDA's data on 2017 to 2019, well after the fact. At this point, the utility companies are filing their earning adjustment mechanisms reports and they're filing their dashboard reports, and they do include numbers of air source and ground source heat pumps that are being installed. And I was looking to see if anybody would be interested in compiling that. I could hook you up with the data, and if you were able to get it into a spreadsheet, it's something we could post and kind of continue to post on the NY-GEO website and elsewhere. I know everybody on the call is usually fairly overextended, but if anybody had energy to be our compilation guru, I make you that offer. And no one immediately, but if anybody thinks that they would like to do that, please get in touch with me. And then the last item we had was Joanne had some ideas about membership, and why don't we go into those?
I thought I'd have something together, but I got busy, so not really, but hang on, I got some notes.
As Joanne's looking at her notes, one of the things was to have automatic payment so that people could sign up and they wouldn't have to be solicited and remember to pay every year. And that's something we are looking at through software to do.
Yeah, that's available through Civi CRM, and other CRMs would do that.
We need more information on that then, Billy, because
I've sent it around a year ago when we were talking about the whole ball of wax with the website.
Right, but
and there was
sorry,
so nothing has changed. Yeah.
Yeah, I that was just not on my radar at that point.
Okay, I'll send it again.
Okay, great. Yeah, I was thinking about, well, starting these trips and trying to utilize that as another tool for membership and entice people to join. Maybe sign up a buddy and you get a 5 or 10% discount on your membership. you know, these tours I'm thinking about in September, maybe, like of all these different, I found a winery out in the Finger Lakes that's geothermal powered. You know, those would be kind of cool, like little meetups on, you know, Friday night or something. I don't know when, but, or weekends if we could do that. Just, you know, a couple things like that. Trying to think what else I have. I'm really not ready to discuss it, I guess. You know, like maybe a t-shirt if you sign up. And, you know, t-shirts are good because it's like an automatic marketing tool because you're wearing it around and people are, you know, saying, oh, what's that? And you get name recognition. So maybe a little bit more promotion and such.
I figured that some people on this call are members of organizations and maybe they have ideas on how to build membership.
Yeah, that's great.
Anyone want to pop up some info?
I did a Google search.
I was thinking Harvey, because Harvey's a member of a lot of different organizations with my husband, and maybe he has some ideas.
I would be happy to think about it and speak to you afterwards, how to grow. I need to understand a little bit more of the focus of the group. I mean, I understand some of it, but yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to speak to Billy and see how else you can grow. It's very difficult, as you know, to take an organization of this size and get more people. You know, the bigger the organization, the bigger it gets. So it's kind of difficult when it's a smaller group and very focused ideas to find other people who are that focused as well. So, but I'm happy to talk to you about it.
Well, NY-GEO is the trade organization for geothermal heat pump installers and manufacturers and engineers and all that. So how many people do we have right now as members? I mean, what you're seeing here is just whoever has time to spare on a Friday afternoon. How many members do we have now, Bill? About 100 or 120 or something?
Yeah, the main memberships are company memberships, and they entitle folks from the company, and among those we have around 300 members at this point.
Oh, I take it back. Then you have a good sizable group, and that's a little bit easier to work with. And I'm happy to reach out to Billy or to you, Bill, and see how it can grow.
Great, thank you.
I'll send out Bill's address too. Anyone else want to get on Harvey's list?
Joanne should be on Harvey's list because she's been thinking about membership a lot.
By the way, while we were on the call, just to let you know, I've been texting the manufacturer from Renai and the manufacturer reps. I'm trying to get them to set some appointments up for me for next week to discuss this. So just, I didn't want you to think what we talked about fell on deaf ears. I've already started to text some of the people there and find out what their concept is for next week. And I'll report back to Billy. Yeah.
Amazing, that's great.
Thanks,
we wouldn't need to meet. In fact, I don't think we would want to meet with them in this time slot. We could meet at another time when we could actually put, you know, a full hour or half hour aside to talk with them directly on these issues.
I was thinking too, like for membership real estate agents, educate them in the technology. I mean, they're clueless. People are. So
yeah. Especially commercial agents, because commercial buildings are such users of heating and cooling. Jay's nodding his head. Jay consults all over the country, so he knows all about that.
I think our membership should be all over the country because we have so much to offer that other areas don't. So I don't think we have to limit it to New York State, but you can learn a lot from us.
Well, the only thing I have to say is this is the most influential organization, even including the national organizations in the country, in my opinion. A lot of IGSHPA and GEO, the Geothermal Exchange Organization. Watch what New York GEO is doing. It's just the way it is. You guys have the brain trust.
The mojo.
Yes.
Well, keep thinking, brainstorm.
Oh, I was going to say, Jay's just such a charmer. He just wants to make us feel good about ourselves.
No, I'm lucky to be a part of this. It was my dumb luck to fall in line with you guys back in 2014 or 13 or whenever. That's the secret to the success of at least any that I see.
Jay, you don't realize we were plotting to pull you in for months.
And Harvey, some of the people who've had to go fall off, they're out west, Colorado, Utah, and we've got members from Canada too. And we have people who from Europe who come to our conferences, and sometimes some of them present.
Wow.
I mean, Europe is a really great resource because they're ahead of us, way ahead of us.
Yeah, they were ahead on a lot. Any energy, they jump ahead because they pay so much for it that they're looking for ways to reduce it. So yeah, that makes a big incentive.
Yep. All right. Well, we're floating into 4 o'clock here.
On board.
Why don't we
As
call it a
always,
session?
Bill.
I'm sorry.
As always, Bill, I'm the contrary voice. I've lived in Europe, and they're horrible on energy. Their infrastructure's so bad they can't get it. But they've got more than half of their vehicles are uncontrolled diesels, and it's a mess. And I would just say, don't feel bad about America. We're a whole lot better than most of Europe, particularly as you go east.
Well said, Will. That's what I hear every time I talk to somebody over there. They still think we're on top.
All right.
Hey guys,
well,
before we go, can I just
Go ahead, Bob. I'm heading off.
What happened to Will?
Bob?
Oh, I'm still here. Just sorry to be the voice of counter, but I don't know. It's just bad over there. It's a mess.
Will, you always have something valuable to say, even if it's a minority opinion. You know what you're talking about, and most of us don't about
I wouldn't
what
say
you have
that.
to say.
I was gonna say that's a total lie. Will is not sorry to be the shit stirrer. He loves that role.
Know me too well, Miss Marshall.
I do. Yes, I do. Takes one to know one, baby.
You got it. Have a great weekend.
Comes with age, Will. I know the feeling.
I got plenty of it.
I can still control my mouth a little better than you.
Yeah, but I'm in my 60th year, so. Well.
So
You
was
got me
Bob-
by a few.
Was Bob saying something when he kind of got
He
cut
was.
off?
Bob, what were you saying? Are you gonna say it? Say it, man.
Hey, it's your last chance.
sorry, something happened there. I just was plugging, just want to make a plug for the rate case process. I think Bill was before talking about the data that we're now getting from the utilities about their sales. Well, a couple years ago, when we were arguing for the reporting requirements that would get us that data, it felt kind of silly because it would be years before we got the data. But the important thing to realize is that it is now years later, and we're getting the data. And we wouldn't have the data today if we hadn't asked for it 2 and 3 and 4 years ago. And when people think about the rate case process, I hope you just take that, under consideration. It may take years to get a result, but the result eventually comes. That's all.
Good point.
So what I'm hearing Bob say is that the arc of justice bends towards the data. Or something like that. Yes, I think it's good. We're gonna learn a lot in the next year from all of everyone's hard work on the rate cases, the energy efficiency order, the heat pump demonstration pilot study, which, by the way, they've approved 200 projects. So, and I'm only responsible for like 190 of the 200. So there's people working hard.
You go, Lisa.
I'm making a few contractors extremely rich. Well, with NYSERDA's help, of course, but I'm the middlewoman. But yeah, I think by next year, we're gonna have all kinds of exciting data to look at, which is very, very fun. And my parting words are, I don't know if you guys know this, but we're about to get a huge shot in the arm in New York because the Building Decarbonization Coalition is investing in New York State. They've just hired a New York director. She has a budget for two more staff. They have a whole exciting plan. They're coming in very respectfully and transparently, knowing that there's other people already operating in the space, and they've already really made a very positive impression on a bunch of us. So I'm so excited for them to come in with all their resources that they've been applying in California and join us here in New York to kind of push us over the electrification finish line. So very exciting. The new director's starting this month. So
Is there a name for that person?
it's Lisa Dix, formerly of the Sierra Club.
Is that with an X or
No.
CK?
X.
Have you seen Hans Detweiler pop up in that outfit?
I have not noticed that name, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything.
Okay, no big deal.
Yeah, but they are really an exciting organization. They seem to be really have a lot of, like, I don't know what you call it, like situational awareness about how to merge into existing work without railroading over people who are doing the work already, and just bringing their resources to bear and being really good communicators, very transparent, very, very respectful, and really like ambitious too, like super ambitious. So we're going to be, I'm already envisioning a lot of exciting work coming out of that. And you know, we should definitely, you know, keep talking amongst the various groups so that we're pulling in the same direction.
Let's talk about membership in NY-GEO.
Invite them to the meetups.
Yep.
Invite them to the
Yeah.
meetings.
Good
And what
idea.
about Renewable Heat Now? Are they going to be joining Renewable Heat Now?
I certainly hope so.
Yeah, we should. Yeah, I think, Joanne, we should definitely include like Renewable Heat Now folks and the members of that organization. Yeah, I think we could get a good crowd if we include them. I mean, and I meant in the fun stuff.
All right, friends,
Yeah, let's call it a day.
let's call it a day.
Thank you very much for
Good
having me
weekend.
join, by the way. Thank you,
Oh,
everyone.
thank you,
Thanks,
Harvey,
Harvey.
for coming.
So long, Billy. Bye-bye.
Appreciate it. Have a good
Bye.
evening.
Good weekend.